Hi, welcome to the YouTube channel and subscribe the channel if you like this story. My name is Ethan Stone and I'm 28 years old. This is the story of how I became billionaire. The girl left me as the employee of my company. You won't believe what happened next. I built my robotics company, Automaton Dynamics, from a cramped garage apartment while everyone told me to get a real job. Today, at my company's annual innovation summit, with my family watching proudly from the audience, my phone buzzed with a message that brought back a sting of old pain. But what happened next changed everything. 6 years of relentless coding, countless rejections, and sacrifice had led to this moment. The first message was a ghost from the past. The second one redefined my present. Oh, if you're watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from. Hit that like button and subscribe to join me on this journey of turning rejection into the sweetest revenge success story you've ever heard. Growing up as the only son with 2 younger sisters in the Stone household meant living in a constant state of practical expectations. My father, Robert Stone, built his small carpentry business, Stone & Sons Woodworks, from the ground up in the 80s. He was a self-made man who prided himself on his craftsmanship and down-to-earth values. In our family, tradition meant one thing: stability came before all else. From my earliest memories, I watched my father teach my sisters, Clara and Daisy, the intricacies of woodworking, encouraging them to pursue vocational trades. When I expressed an interest in computers at age 12, my father chuckled and patted my shoulder. "That's a nice hobby, son." But real work happens with your hands. My mother, Sarah, was the steadfast homemaker. She managed our modest home immaculately and rarely questioned my father's pronouncements in public. In private, she would sometimes offer quiet encouragement, but always followed with, "Just don't tell your father I said so." She loved me, I know that, but she had accepted her role in life and expected me to do the same. Despite the lack of encouragement, I showed an innate talent for logic and circuitry from an early age. In middle school, I rebuilt our neighbor's broken lawnmower engine, earning enough to buy my first circuit board. My father remarked afterward that it was cute how I enjoyed tinkering. When my science teacher called home to discuss my potential, suggesting engineering magnet programs, my father thanked her politely and never mentioned it again. By high school, I had taught myself basic programming through online forums and built a small automated feeder for our chickens that the local farmers cooperative actually considered for commercial use. The community newspaper ran a small story about it. My father saw the article and commented, "Automation is just a passing fad. Real business happens with people, not machines." My sisters received practical used cars for their 16th birthdays. I received a used desktop computer that my father deemed sufficient for schoolwork. Little did he know that I would use that computer to begin building what would eventually become Automaton Dynamics, my company that specialized in industrial automation and robotics. When college application time came, I applied to the California Institute of Technology, Caltech, without telling my parents. My high school physics teacher helped me with the application process, recognizing what my parents could not see. When the acceptance letter arrived, my mother was genuinely happy for me, but worried about my father's reaction. "What are you going to do at Caltech?" my father scoffed when I announced my acceptance at dinner. "Waste 4 years when you could be learning a valuable trade. Robotics is just glorified assembly lines. Besides, look at all these factories closing down." "It's the top engineering school in the country," I said quietly. "Engineering is not for practical men, Ethan. You'll struggle, get discouraged, and drop out. Then what?" "I won't drop out," I promised. After weeks of arguments, my father reluctantly agreed to pay for my first year at Caltech with conditions. I had to maintain a 3.7 GPA, work part-time to cover my personal expenses, and call home weekly to report my progress. "1 year," he said, "then we'll see if this is just a waste of my money." The night before I left for Pasadena, my mother came to my room. "Your father means well," she said, sitting on the edge of my bed. "He just wants to protect you from disappointment." "He doesn't believe in me," I replied, packing the last of my circuit boards. "He doesn't understand you," she corrected. "Maybe someday you can show him." I zipped my duffel bag closed with determination. "I will show him. I promise you that." As I boarded the bus to California the next morning, my father's final words echoed in my head. When this robot fantasy fails, there will always be an apprentice position at Stone & Sons Woodworks. I stared out the window, watching my hometown shrink beneath me, and made a silent vow. I would never be sanding lumber at my father's company. I would build something of my own, something so undeniably successful that even Robert Stone could not dismiss it. I just had no idea then how completely that vow would transform my life. Caltech was everything I had hoped for and more challenging than I had feared. During orientation week, I found myself surrounded by brilliant minds from around the world. For the first time in my life, nobody questioned whether I belonged in a technical field because I wasn't interested in traditional trades. The only question was whether I could keep up intellectually. The workload was crushing. I took a full course load of mechanical engineering and computer science classes while working 15 hours a week at the campus hardware store to fulfill my promise to my father. My roommate, Leo Chen, rarely saw me awake. I would return from work at 9 p.m., study until 2 a.m., catch 5 hours of sleep, and repeat the cycle. "You're going to burn out," Leo warned me one night, finding me asleep on my workbench. "I can't afford to slow down," I mumbled, splashing cold water on my face. "My dad is only paying for 1 year. After that, I need scholarships, or I'm out." By midterms, I was physically exhausted, but academically thriving. I earned the highest grade in my Introduction to Robotics class, catching the attention of Professor Elena Petrova, who would later become my most important mentor. "Stone," she called out after class one day. "That pick-and-place algorithm you proposed for the lab challenge, have you considered its commercial applications?" I had not. I'd been too busy surviving to think about innovation. But Professor Petrova saw something in my approach that I had missed. The manufacturing sector would pay a premium for that level of efficiency, she said. "Come to my office hours. Let's talk about it." Those office hours changed the trajectory of my life. Professor Petrova helped me refine my robotics algorithms and introduced me to graduate students working on similar problems. For the first time, I began thinking beyond grades and survival. By second semester, I had assembled a small group of like-minded students. There was Maya Singh, a brilliant software engineer with a background in machine vision. David Kim, who understood mechanical design better than anyone I had ever met, and Chloe Davies, whose business acumen complemented my technical skills. We began meeting in my garage apartment on Sunday afternoons, developing what would eventually become Automaton Dynamics. Our idea was simple but powerful: create adaptable robotic systems for small to medium-sized businesses that were both highly efficient and easy to integrate. "Most industrial robots are too rigid and expensive for smaller operations," I explained to the group. "We can build something that democratizes automation." During freshman year, I also met Jessica Hayes. She was in my Intro to Computer Science class, bright and outgoing, always impeccably dressed. I was immediately smitten. After weeks of shy glances and brief hallway conversations, I finally mustered the courage to ask her out. It was a simple coffee date at a campus cafe. I remember being so nervous, my hands clammy. I was wearing my best and only collared shirt, likely wrinkled from being stuffed in my duffel bag. Jessica was polite, even friendly. We talked about classes, our shared interest in tech, and our future dreams. When I, heart-pounding, suggested a second date, her smile faltered slightly. "Ethan, you're a really nice guy," she started, the classic breakup line. "And you're clearly brilliant, but I'm looking for someone with a bit more stability. You know, someone who isn't living off student loans and working at the hardware store. My family has certain expectations." She gestured vaguely. "It's just not the right fit. I need someone more established." The unspoken words hung in the air. "You're poor, Ethan. Not good enough." I remember the sting, the feeling of being judged solely on my financial standing. I nodded, mumbled something, and left, the bitter taste of rejection mixing with the stale coffee. I never mentioned our startup idea to her. She wouldn't have understood. My father called every Sunday evening, as agreed. Our conversations followed a predictable pattern. "How are your grades?" he would ask. "All A's so far," I would answer. "And the job? Still employed? Getting more hours during holidays?" "Good. Any thoughts about what you'll do when the year ends?" I never mentioned our startup idea during these calls. I knew exactly what he would say. Another example of you living in a fantasy world. By April of freshman year, we had a working prototype. Professor Petrova encouraged us to enter the university's annual engineering innovation competition, which offered $30,000 in seed funding to the winner. We're not ready, I protested. You're more ready than you think, she countered. The judges need to see this. The night before the competition, I called my mother instead of my father. I might have a chance at winning some money tomorrow, I said carefully, for a business idea. That's wonderful, honey, she said. What kind of business? I explained our robotics software as simply as I could. Your father always says business is about solving problems, she said when I finished. It sounds like you're solving an important one. Do you think he would be proud? I asked, hating how young I sounded. There was a pause. I think he would be surprised, she answered honestly. But someday he will be proud. I already am. The next day, we won first place and $30,000 in seed funding. The university press release included a photo of our team holding an oversized check. I sent the link to my parents. My father's response came hours later, playing inventor on the university's dime. I see. Focus on your grades. That summer, instead of returning home, I stayed in Pasadena and worked on automaton dynamics. The seed money allowed us to rent a tiny workshop off campus and pay ourselves minimal stipends. I called my father to tell him I would not need his financial support for sophomore year. So, you're dropping out, he said, a note of satisfaction in his voice. No. I received an academic scholarship. Then, I will be continuing my education while developing our business. There was a long silence. Businesses need customers, Ethan. They need revenue. Who is buying your little robots? I had no answer for that yet. We had no customers, no revenue. That's what I thought, he said. Well, good luck with your scholarship. At least you're not wasting my money anymore. Sophomore year, I reduced my course load to part-time status, focusing the majority of my energy on automaton dynamics. We worked 18-hour days refining our product and pitching to potential clients. We faced rejection after rejection. No one trusts automation from college students, Chloe observed after our 12th failed pitch. Then we need to stop looking like college students, I decided. We rebranded, created professional materials, and practiced our pitch until we could deliver it in our sleep. And then, finally, we got our first yes from a small textile manufacturer willing to take a chance on us. The day we received our first payment of $8,000, I took the team out for tacos. As we celebrated, I thought about calling my father to share the news, but decided against it. I wanted our success to be undeniable before I faced his skepticism again. Little did I know that our first client would lead to 6 more, and those 6 to a dozen more. By the end of my sophomore year, Automaton Dynamics was generating enough revenue to hire 3 more engineers and move to a legitimate office space. I was no longer just a student. I was a CEO. Our early success proved to be both a blessing and a curse. With our growing client list came growing expectations, and we were still a company run by students with limited experience. The summer after sophomore year brought our first major crisis. One of our food processing clients experienced a critical downtime due to an unforeseen software glitch. It was not entirely our fault. They had integrated our system incorrectly with their legacy equipment, ignoring our compatibility guidelines. But the client publicly blamed our inexperienced team and threatened legal action. We cannot afford a lawsuit, David warned during an emergency team meeting. We barely have enough runway for 4 months as is. I had not slept in hours, trying to help the client troubleshoot their system while also defending our reputation. We need a lawyer, I said. And we need money to pay that lawyer, which meant we needed investors. Until then, we had been bootstrapping, using our competition winnings and revenue to fund growth. But legal troubles would quickly drain our modest bank account. The next 2 weeks were a blur of investor pitches. I created a presentation highlighting our technology, traction, and team, then took it to every venture capital firm in Silicon Valley. The responses were painfully consistent. Your technology seems promising, but your team lacks operational experience. Come back when you have a seasoned CEO. Have you considered bringing on an older, more established co-founder? It might help with credibility in the industrial tech space. After one particularly demoralizing rejection, I sat on a park bench and called my mother, something I rarely allowed myself to do when feeling vulnerable. Maybe Dad was right, I admitted. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Your father has been wrong about many things, she said firmly. Don't make him right by giving up. The next day, I had a pitch meeting with Mr. Thomas Sterling of Innovation Capital, one of the few investor firms known for backing young, unconventional founders. I arrived sleep-deprived and discouraged, expecting another rejection. Thomas listened to my pitch without interruption, asked detailed technical questions that showed he actually understood our product, and then leaned forward. You remind me of myself 30 years ago, he said. Brilliant, determined, and completely underestimated. I am going to invest $750,000 for 12% of your company, and I am going to connect you with the best tech lawyer in my network. I nearly cried with relief. But he continued, you need to promise me something. When you succeed, and you will succeed, you will remember what it feels like to be dismissed because of your age and unconventional background. And you will help the next young man who comes to you with a brilliant idea. I promise, I said, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. With Thomas's investment, we survived the legal threat, settling with the client for a fraction of what they initially demanded. The experience taught us to be more careful with client onboarding and to document everything meticulously. It also taught me that having the right investor could be transformative. Thomas became more than a financial backer. He became a mentor and advocate. He introduced us to potential clients, helped us refine our business model, and coached me on leadership skills. By the end of junior year, Automaton Dynamics had 45 employees working from a converted industrial unit in downtown Los Angeles. We were generating consistent revenue, though we were still far from profitable after covering salaries, rent, and development costs. Each new hire brought both excitement and anxiety. These people were trusting their livelihoods to my vision. What if I failed them? What if my father was right about my capabilities? The pressure manifested physically. I developed insomnia and stress-induced back pain. I lost 20 pounds without trying. My academic advisor called me into his office, concerned about my declining grades. You need to make a choice, he said gently. Your company or your degree. You cannot keep doing both at this pace. I chose the company, but negotiated to remain enrolled part-time. Graduation would take longer, but I refused to be a dropout. That would be giving my father the satisfaction of being right. Our breakthrough came in the fall of my senior year. Our team developed a significant innovation in our robotic control system that made it both more adaptable and more energy efficient. When we announced the update, our client list suddenly expanded from regional manufacturers to national enterprises. Monthly revenue quadrupled in days. We hired rapidly to keep up with demand, moving to a larger office and bringing on experienced professionals who commanded higher salaries than we could really afford. It was a calculated risk. We needed their expertise to scale properly. One of those hires was Marcus Thorne, a seasoned chief operating officer who had guided 2 previous startups to successful acquisition. At 55, he was 27 years older than me and brought a steadying presence to our young company. You have something special here, he told me during his first week. But you are growing too fast without proper operational controls. Let me help you build a sustainable business, not just an impressive technology. Under Marcus's guidance, we streamlined our production process, improved our client onboarding, and began serious discussions about long-term growth strategy. For the first time, I had a leadership team that did not consist of my college friends. When we landed our first Fortune 100 client, a major automotive manufacturer, I finally called my father with news I thought would impress him. Dad, Automaton Dynamics just signed an 8-figure contract with Global Autocorp, I said, unable to keep the pride from my voice. There was a pause. That is a significant client, he acknowledged. But these tech companies come and go, Ethan. How sustainable is this robotics business of yours? We have 120 employees now. Consistent growth, major clients, and are you profitable? We were not yet. We were reinvesting every dollar into growth. I thought so, he said when I did not immediately answer. Be careful not to let this distract you from finishing your degree. You'll need something to fall back on when this robot bubble bursts. I hung up, feeling deflated. Would anything ever be enough to make him believe in me? That night, I stayed late at the office reviewing our growth projections with Marcus. "Your father still doesn't get it, does he?" he asked. I had not realized he had overheard my call. "He never will," I sighed. "My father was the same way," he said, surprising me. "He thought I should have taken over the family plumbing business. He never understood my passion for scale and efficiency." "How did you deal with that?" I asked. He smiled. "I stopped seeking his approval and started seeking his respect. Those are different things. You may never get the first, but you can demand the second." I took his words to heart. I would stop trying to make my father proud. Instead, I would build something so undeniably successful that respect would be the only option. The months following our major client breakthrough were a whirlwind of growth and challenges. Automaton Dynamics expanded from 120 employees to over 300, outgrowing our office space 3 times. We moved into a gleaming, state-of-the-art facility in downtown Los Angeles with our logo emblazoned on the entrance doors. Every morning, walking into that building filled me with a mixture of pride and terror. So many people were now dependent on my leadership. So many things could still go wrong. Marcus proved to be not just a skilled COO, but an invaluable mentor. He had navigated the waters I now found myself in and knew every hidden reef and current. "You need to raise a proper Series B round," he advised as our cash reserves dwindled despite growing revenue. "We need capital to sustain this growth rate." The idea of pitching to investors again brought back painful memories of rejection. But Automaton Dynamics was a different company now. We had impressive clients, proven technology, and actual revenue. Thomas from Innovation Capital led our Series B round, bringing in several larger institutional investors as co-investors. We raised $50 million at a valuation of $400 million. The tech press took notice, with Wired magazine running a feature titled Automaton Dynamics, the young founder revolutionizing industrial robotics. My mother sent me the article with a simple message: "So proud of you, honey." My father did not contact me, but I heard through my brother Liam that he had seen the coverage. "He asked if your company was really worth that much or if it was just investor hype," Liam reported. "What did you tell him?" I asked. "I told him to read the article and form his own opinion," Liam said. "For what it's worth, I think what you're doing is incredible. Daisy does too, though she would never say it to Dad." My siblings and I had grown distant as adults. They had both joined Stone & Sons Woodworks after college, taking the path of least resistance. I sometimes wondered if they resented my rebellion or envied my freedom. With our Series B funding secured, we expanded aggressively into new markets. The personal cost was enormous. I had not taken a vacation in years. My diet consisted primarily of protein bars and coffee consumed at my desk. I had broken up with my girlfriend of 8 months because I could not give her more than 1 evening a week of my time. "You need to delegate more," Marcus urged after finding me asleep at my desk at 3 a.m. "This company cannot depend solely on you." "I am fine," I insisted, though the dark circles under my eyes told a different story. "You are killing yourself," he countered. "And that helps no one. Build a leadership team you trust. Let them carry some of the weight." Reluctantly, I began to delegate, hiring a chief technology officer to oversee our engineering innovations and a chief product officer to manage day-to-day operations. It was harder than I expected to relinquish control, but necessary for both my health and the company's growth. As Automaton Dynamics became more visible in the industry, competitors took notice. Larger automation firms began developing similar products. Some tried to poach our key engineers with offers of double their current salaries. Others spread rumors about our technology's reliability. "This is actually a good sign," Thomas reassured me during one of our regular advisor meetings. "They wouldn't bother if you weren't a threat." One competitor went beyond ethical boundaries, attempting to hack our systems to steal our proprietary code. The irony of a robotics company being targeted was not lost on me, but our own protections held. We traced the attack and sent a cease and desist letter that put an end to their efforts. Through all of this, I maintained my part-time student status at Caltech, determined to complete my degree. I was now in my 6th year, taking just 1 or 2 classes per semester. My father had long since stopped asking about my academic progress, assuming I had dropped out. In the spring of that 6th year, my academic advisor called me in for a meeting. "You have enough credits to graduate this May," he informed me, reviewing my transcript. "Really?" I had lost track, focusing on completing one course at a time. "Really? And you will graduate with honors despite your unconventional path." He smiled. "The commencement committee has actually been discussing you." "You? Why?" "They are considering you for the student commencement speech." "Your story is rather remarkable, Ethan, building a multi-million-dollar company while completing your degree." I was stunned. "I'm not sure I have time to write a speech." "Think about it," he urged. "It would be a powerful message to other young entrepreneurs." That evening, I called my mother with the news. "I'm graduating in May," I said. "With honors." "Oh, Ethan," her voice filled with genuine joy. "We will all be there. Your father, too." "He doesn't have to come," I said quickly. "He is your father. Of course, he will come." Her tone left no room for argument. The thought of my father attending my graduation filled me with conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted him to see my success, to finally acknowledge that I had proven him wrong. Another part dreaded his inevitable dismissal of my achievements. As graduation approached, Automaton Dynamics faced its biggest decision yet. Several larger tech conglomerates had approached us about acquisition, offering eye-watering sums. At the same time, our board was discussing the possibility of an initial public offering, IPO. "The IPO market is strong right now," Marcus explained during a late-night strategy session. "With our growth metrics and client list, we could command a significant valuation." "But is the company ready?" I asked. "Are we ready? We would need to get our financials in perfect order, strengthen the board with some recognized names. But yes, I believe we are ready." The timing was surreal. The IPO preparation would coincide almost exactly with my graduation, 2 culminations arriving simultaneously. We decided to move forward with the IPO process, working with investment banks to prepare our S-1 filing with the Securities and Exchange Commission. The process was exhausting, requiring endless meetings with lawyers, auditors, and bankers. The week before graduation, we made the confidential filing, but kept the news quiet. The public announcement would come later, after the SEC review. Only our executive team and board knew the details. I had declined the commencement speech opportunity, lacking the time to prepare properly. Instead, I would graduate quietly, just another student crossing the stage, albeit one running a company valued at hundreds of millions of dollars. My parents and sisters would fly in the day before the ceremony. It would be the first time I had seen my father in over 3 years. I arranged for them to stay at the Beverly Wilshire, my small act of showing how far I had come from the struggling freshman he had reluctantly supported. The night before graduation, Marcus called me with news that took my breath away. "The bankers think we should price the IPO higher than we discussed," he said, excitement evident in his voice. "The demand is incredible. We are looking at a potential billion-dollar valuation on day one." $1 billion. The number seemed unreal. "When will we know for sure?" I asked. "The final pricing will happen tomorrow morning. I will call you the moment it is confirmed." Tomorrow morning, graduation morning. As I hung up, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "We have landed. See you tomorrow at the ceremony. We are all so proud." I wondered if that all truly included my father. The morning of my graduation dawned with a perfect May sky, blue and cloudless. I woke at 6 a.m., too anxious to sleep any longer. My apartment, a modest 2-bedroom I rarely saw due to my long hours at the office, was a short drive from campus. I checked my phone immediately. No calls from Marcus yet about the IPO pricing. The investment bankers on the East Coast would be working on finalizing the numbers right now. I had a notification from the SEC secure portal indicating some minor comments on our filing, but nothing that would delay our timeline. As I showered and dressed, I tried to focus on the graduation ceremony rather than the IPO. Today should be about celebrating my academic achievement, the degree I had stubbornly pursued, despite my father's skepticism and the demands of running a company. I chose a simple navy suit to wear under my graduation gown. Professional, but not flashy. My cap and gown hung on the back of my door, the tassel dangling off the mortarboard. After years of part-time study while building automaton dynamics, the sight of that cap and gown felt surreal. My phone rang at 8 a.m. It was Marcus. "Ethan, we have a preliminary price," he said without preamble. "The underwriters are recommending $60 per share." I did a quick mental calculation. That would put us just over $1 billion market cap on day one. And, he finished for me, a unicorn at IPO. It's rare, Ethan. Really rare. My hands trembled slightly. When will it be final? The pricing committee meets in an hour. Barring any last-minute changes, we should have confirmation by 9:30 a.m. The announcement would go out shortly after that. My graduation ceremony starts at 9 a.m., I said. "I know. I can call you when it is official. Will your phone be on?" "Yes, I will keep it on vibrate." After hanging up, I sat on the edge of my bed, trying to process what this meant. $1 billion valuation would change everything. It would validate all the years of hard work, all the nights I had slept on my office couch, all the doubts I had pushed through. It would also be the ultimate answer to my father's dismissal of my robot fantasy. I took a deep breath and pushed that thought away. I had long since stopped making decisions to prove my father wrong. Automaton Dynamics was about creating something meaningful, something that improved efficiency and lives. The valuation was a side effect, not the goal. At 8:45 a.m., I headed toward campus to meet my family at the designated gathering spot for graduates and their guests. The walk helped calm my nerves, the familiar paths of Caltech grounding me in the journey that had brought me here. I spotted my mother first, elegant in a floral dress. Next to her stood my sisters, Clara and Daisy, both smiling brightly, and then my father, stern-faced as always, his posture rigid in his perfectly tailored suit. He looked older than I remembered, his hair now more gray than brown. "Ethan," my mother hurried toward me, arms outstretched. Her hug was tight, genuine. "We are so proud of you, honey." My sisters each gave me quick hugs, offering congratulations. Then I stood before my father, unsure of the appropriate greeting after so much time and distance. He extended his hand formally. "Congratulations on completing your degree, Ethan." Not a hug, not even "I'm proud of you," just acknowledgement of a task completed. I shook his hand, feeling a familiar disappointment settle in my chest. "Thank you for coming." "Your mother insisted," he said, as if I might have wondered about his presence otherwise. We made awkward small talk as other families reunited around us with much more enthusiasm. My mother filled the silence with questions about the ceremony and plans for a celebration lunch afterward. "I made reservations at the Raymond 1886, I said, naming one of Pasadena's finest restaurants. My father raised an eyebrow. "Business must be going well." "It is," I said, simply unwilling to elaborate. Let the IPO news speak for itself when it came. An announcement called for graduates to begin lining up according to school and department. I needed to join the engineering school procession. "I have to go," I said. "The family seating is in Section B. I'll see you after the ceremony." My mother hugged me again. "We will be watching for you." As I walked away, I heard my father say to my sisters, "At least he finished the degree. He'll need it when this robot bubble bursts." Some things never changed. I joined the line of engineering graduates, adjusting my cap and checking that my phone was on vibrate in the pocket I had sewn into my gown specifically for today. All around me, fellow graduates were taking selfies, laughing, celebrating with friends. I stood alone, my mind divided between the ceremony ahead and the IPO pricing being finalized across town. The procession began at 9 a.m., with graduates filing into the grand auditorium where the ceremony would take place. From my position, I could see Section B, where my family would be seated. I spotted my mother's dress, my father's rigid posture beside her. At 9:31 a.m., my phone vibrated. "Marcus." I stepped slightly out of line to check the message. "Pricing confirmed at $60 per share. Final valuation $1.2 billion. Press release goes out in minutes. Congratulations, Ethan. You did it. $1.2 billion. My knees felt weak. I had founded a company now valued at over $1 billion, the unicorn status that so many startups dreamed of but few achieved. And my father was about to find out. I rejoined the procession, moving forward on autopilot. The ceremony began with the traditional pomp and circumstance, university officials giving speeches about achievement and the future. I heard little of it, my mind racing with the implications of what had just happened. My phone vibrated again at 9:38 a.m. The press release had gone out. Within minutes, business news channels would be reporting on Automaton Dynamics IPO pricing. The tech and business press would be running stories about the young male founder who had built a billion-dollar empire from a garage. And soon, very soon, my father would know. As I sat waiting for my name to be called, my phone began vibrating continuously. Congratulatory messages from employees, investors, mentors. I ignored them all, focusing on maintaining my composure as the moment approached. Then, at 9:45 a.m., a different kind of message from my father. I opened it with trembling fingers. Don't expect any help from me going forward. You are on your own. The words hit me like a physical blow. On today, of all days, when I was graduating with honors and taking my company public at $1 billion valuation, his message was still one of rejection and abandonment. Tears threatened, but I blinked them back. I would not cry. Not now. Not because of him. They called my name moments later. Ethan Michael Stone, Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering with honors. I rose on unsteady legs and walked across the stage. The dean shook my hand, handed me my diploma. I managed to smile for the photographer, though inside I was shattered by my father's text. As I stepped off the stage, my phone vibrated again. Marcus. I hesitated, then answered quietly, turning away from the ceremony. Hello. His voice was jubilant. Ethan, the stock is already trading up 20% in the private placement. The IPO is a massive success. We just hit $1.4 billion in market cap. Everyone is calling about it. CNBC wants an interview, Bloomberg. I was still close enough to the stage that his excited voice carried. Several people nearby turned to look, including some faculty members. That is amazing news, I said, my voice carrying more than I intended. $1 billion IPO. I can hardly believe it. More heads turned. A murmur spread through the nearby graduates. We need to schedule a press conference, Marcus continued, unaware of my surroundings. As CEO of a newly public billion-dollar company, you need to address the investors and media. I understand, I said, still speaking loudly enough to be heard by those around me. I will come to the office as soon as the graduation ceremony ends. I ended the call and looked up to see dozens of eyes on me. The whispering spread rapidly. Billion-dollar IPO. CEO. The words rippled through the crowd. I turned toward the family seating area and saw my father's face. He was staring at me, his expression a mixture of shock and disbelief. He held his phone in his hand. He must have just seen the news alert about Automaton Dynamics IPO. The timing could not have been more perfect. Minutes after texting me that I was on my own, he discovered that his hobbyist son had just become the CEO of a public company worth more than $1 billion. Our eyes met across the auditorium. For the first time in my life, I saw something new in my father's gaze. It was not pride. It was not love. It was respect. The remainder of the graduation ceremony passed in a blur. I returned to my seat among fellow graduates who now looked at me with new interest, whispering questions I pretended not to hear. The university president continued with his closing remarks, but few people were listening. The buzz about the student CEO with the billion-dollar IPO had swept through the auditorium. As we filed out following the recessional, several professors stopped to congratulate me, some mentioning they had just seen the news on their phones. Professor Petrova, my earliest supporter, gave me a knowing smile and a thumbs up from across the crowd. The graduates dispersed to find their families in the designated meeting area outside. I spotted my mother first, waving excitedly. My sisters stood beside her, looking impressed and slightly uncomfortable. My father stood slightly apart, his face unreadable, still clutching his phone. Ethan, my mother embraced me tightly. Your company is all over the news. Why did you not tell us? The timing was confidential until this morning, I explained. We could not disclose the IPO details before the official announcement. My sisters offered awkward congratulations, clearly unsure how to react to their older brother's sudden prominent success. Clara mentioned something about the stock price already rising in early trading. Daisy asked if I was now a billionaire. The company is valued at over $1 billion, I clarified. My ownership stake is significant, but not majority. On paper, yes, I am now worth tens of millions at least. Throughout this exchange, my father remained silent, his expression stony. Finally, he stepped forward. You kept this from us deliberately, he said. It was an accusation, not a question. The SEC has strict rules about disclosure before an IPO, I replied evenly. And honestly, would you have believed me if I had told you? Your text message came through just before they called my name. I continued, holding up my phone. Don't expect any help from me going forward. You are on your own. Interesting timing, Dad. My mother gasped. Robert, you did not. My father's face flushed. I was simply acknowledging his independence. He has made it clear he does not need family support. That is not what you meant, and we both know it, I said, surprising myself with my calm. You have never believed in me or what I was building. You have been waiting for me to fail since the day I left for Caltech. Several nearby families had stopped to listen, recognizing me from the news alerts now circulating widely. Smartphones were pointed in our direction, people obviously recording the confrontation between the newly minted tech CEO and her father. This is not the place for this discussion, my father said stiffly, noticing the attention. I agree, I said. Let's go to the restaurant. I have a private room reserved. As we walked across campus, my phone continuously buzzed with notifications. Marcus had texted that the stock was now trading at $70 per share, well above our IPO price. The market was responding enthusiastically. At the restaurant, the staff recognized me immediately. Congratulations on your IPO, Mr. Stone, the host said as he led us to the private dining room. Your office sent over champagne. Indeed, a bottle of Dom Pérignon sat chilling in an ice bucket with a note from my executive team. Once we were seated and the door closed, my father wasted no time. So this is why you have been so secretive about your company, he said, planning your big reveal for maximum effect. I have been building a legitimate business for years, I replied. The IPO is just the latest milestone, not the goal itself. A robotics business, he scoffed, built on venture capital and hype. Built on solving real efficiency problems for major corporations, I corrected. We have over 200 enterprise clients, including Fortune 50 companies. Our automation technology is the most advanced on the market. And you managed all this while supposedly completing your degree. There was nothing supposed about it, I said, placing my diploma on the table. I finished what I started despite your predictions of failure. My mother placed her hand on my father's arm. Robert, our son has accomplished something extraordinary. Can you not simply be proud of him? He shrugged off her hand. Extraordinary? We'll see if this company even exists in 5 years. Most of these tech startups crash and burn after the IPO. Liam surprisingly spoke up. Dad, Automaton Dynamics isn't some fly-by-night operation. They are the leading provider in their sector. I looked them up after seeing Ethan in Wired last year. Their client list is impressive. My father turned to him, betrayal in his eyes. You knew about this? I knew they were successful, Liam admitted. I didn't know about the IPO. My phone rang. Marcus again. I excused myself to take the call in the corner of the room. Ethan, I hate to interrupt your graduation, but the CNBC interview is scheduled for 2 p.m. We need you at the office by 1 p.m. to prepare. I will be there, I promised, ending the call. I returned to the table. I apologize, but I need to cut this short. I have media obligations this afternoon. More important than your family lunch? My father demanded. As important as your work obligations have always been, I replied evenly. As CEO of a public company, I have responsibilities to our shareholders, employees, and clients. Robert, my mother interjected, perhaps we could reschedule dinner for this evening after Ethan's work commitments. I shook my head. I will be in meetings and interviews all day and likely late into the evening. The first day of trading is critical. Of course it is, my father said sarcastically. Your little robot program is more important than family. Something in me snapped. 6 years of dismissal, doubt, and derision crystallized into a moment of perfect clarity. My little robot program, as you call it, just created over $1 billion in value, I said, my voice steady. It employs over 300 people who depend on me for their livelihoods. It optimizes operations for millions of users across our client base. I stood, gathering my things. I did all of this while you were telling me I would fail, while you were betting against me at every turn, while you were grooming my sisters for your business and telling me the best I could hope for was working with my hands. The room fell completely silent. I did not build automaton dynamics to prove you wrong, Dad. I built it because I believed in it. But your text today, telling me I am on my own, just as I was walking across that stage, made one thing perfectly clear. I looked him directly in the eyes. I have been on my own since the day I left for Caltech, and look what I accomplished without your support or approval. My mother had tears in her eyes. My sisters looked stunned. My father opened his mouth as if to speak, then closed it again. For once, Robert Stone had no ready response. I need to go, I said more gently. Marcus has a car waiting to take me to the office. Ethan, my mother began. It is okay, Mom, I assured her. We can have dinner tomorrow night. You and the girls are welcome to visit the office tomorrow if you would like a tour. I did not include my father in the invitation. His expression shifted from shock to something harder, a defensive pride taking hold. I have an early flight, he said stiffly. Business requires my attention back home. It always does, I replied. As I turned to leave, my father spoke again. Ethan, I paused, looking back at him. Congratulations on your IPO, he said, the words clearly difficult for him. It is impressive. Not, I am proud of you, not, I was wrong. Just an acknowledgement of the undeniable. Thank you, I said. That might be the first genuine compliment you have ever given me. I left the restaurant to find a black town car waiting at the curb, Marcus standing beside it. His face lit up when he saw me. There he is, the man of the hour. He clapped me on the shoulder. We are up 25% from the IPO price. The market loves us. As I slid into the car, I glanced back at the restaurant. My father had emerged and stood watching, his expression inscrutable. Our eyes met briefly before the car pulled away. I had imagined this moment for years. The moment when my father would finally have to acknowledge my success. I had expected to feel triumphant, vindicated. Instead, I felt something unexpected. Freedom. Freedom from seeking his approval. Freedom from defining myself in opposition to his expectations. I was Ethan Stone, CEO of Automaton Dynamics, a publicly traded company valued at over $1 billion. That identity belonged to me alone, not defined by my father's opinion of it. As the car headed toward our headquarters, where champagne and celebration awaited, I took one last look at my graduation cap sitting beside me on the seat. 2 journeys completed in a single day. One chapter closed, another beginning. My phone buzzed with a text from Thomas, my first investor. You proved them all wrong. Now show them what you will do next. I smiled, looking forward instead of back. The hours following graduation and our IPO were a whirlwind of media interviews, investor calls, and employee celebrations. I barely slept, running on adrenaline and the exhilaration of seeing years of work validated so dramatically in the public markets. By closing bell on the second day of trading, Automaton Dynamics stock had stabilized at $75 per share, giving us a market cap of $15 billion. My personal stake, just under 10% after dilution through funding rounds, was theoretically worth over $150 million. Though lockup periods would prevent me from selling shares for 6 months, the financial reality was still abstract numbers on paper rather than tangible wealth. What felt more real was the responsibility. 300 employees, thousands of shareholders, and millions of end users now depended on our continued success. On the evening of the second day, I finally made it back to my apartment to shower and change before dinner with my mother and sisters. My father, true to his word, had taken an early flight home, unwilling or unable to process the new reality of his son's success. As I changed into fresh clothes, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the mirror. I looked exhausted, but somehow different, as if the events of the past days had physically transformed me. Perhaps it was simply the weight of responsibility settling visibly on my shoulders. My phone rang. Thomas, my first investor and mentor. "How are you holding up?" he asked when I answered. "Honestly, I'm not sure," I admitted. "It doesn't feel entirely real yet." "It never does at first," he said with a knowing laugh. "But the responsibility feels real immediately, doesn't it?" "Exactly. How did things go with your father? I saw the graduation timing coincided perfectly with the announcement." I sighed. As well as could be expected, he congratulated me, but it was clear he was only acknowledging what he could not deny. "Some people cannot adapt when the narrative they have constructed is challenged," he said gently. "His story about you was that you would fail without his guidance. Your success threatens his worldview." "I know," I said. I just always thought that somewhere deep down he would want to be proven wrong about me. Give him time, Thomas advised. Some people need longer to reconcile their expectations with reality. Meanwhile, you have a company to run. After hanging up, I sat on the edge of my bed, suddenly overwhelmed by fatigue and emotion. The confrontation with my father had left a hollow feeling amid the triumph. For years, I had pushed myself partly to prove him wrong. Now that I had done so in the most public and definitive way possible, the victory felt incomplete. My doorbell rang. My mother and sisters had arrived to pick me up for dinner. Over a quiet meal at a small, unassuming restaurant away from the financial district where I might be recognized, my mother finally asked the question that had been hanging in the air. What happened between you and your father? When did it get so broken? I twirled pasta on my fork, considering my answer. It was never really whole to begin with, Mom. He never saw me as having the same potential as Liam and Daisy. When I chose a different path, it just confirmed what he already believed. He is proud in his way, she offered weakly. No, I said gently. He is impressed by what he cannot dismiss. That is different from pride. Liam cleared his throat. For what it's worth, Dad has been impossible to work with since the IPO news broke. He spent all day on the phone with his investment advisor, trying to buy shares in your company. I nearly choked on my water. He what? Apparently, he thinks it's a good investment now. Liam smiled wryly, though he would never admit that to you. The irony is almost too perfect, I said, shaking my head. What will you do now? Daisy asked, changing the subject from Dad. I mean, it was the question I'd been asking myself since graduation. What kind of relationship, if any, could I have with a father who had bet so consistently against me? I am not going to pursue his approval anymore, I said finally. That chapter is closed, but I will not exclude him from my life out of spite either. The door remains open on my terms. My mother reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You have become so wise, Ethan. Stronger than I ever was. You did your best, Mom, I assured her, returning the squeeze. No, she said firmly, I did not. I should have stood up for you more. I let his dismissal of your dreams go unchallenged too often. We cannot change the past, I said, but we can choose how we move forward. The next morning, I gave my family a tour of Automaton Dynamics headquarters. The employees were still in celebration mode, though work continued. Many stopped to congratulate me and meet my family. This is incredible, Daisy said as we walked through the engineering department, where dozens of developers worked on our core technology. I had no idea it was so substantial. What did you think I was doing all these years? I asked, genuinely curious. Liam shrugged. Honestly, Dad made it sound like you were playing around with computers in a glorified school project. And you believed him without ever asking me? Liam had the grace to look embarrassed. I should have made up my own mind. I'm sorry, Ethan. That afternoon, after my family departed for their flight home, Marcus found me in my office reviewing our post-IPO strategy. Your father called, he said without preamble. He wanted to know if you would consider joining the board of Stone & Sons Woodworks. He paused, then quoted, His business expertise would be valuable to our company. I laughed out loud, the absurdity of the request hitting me like a wave. After years of dismissing my business acumen, my father now wanted to leverage it for his own company. What did you tell him? I asked. I told him you were in meetings all day, but that I would pass along the message. Marcus raised an eyebrow. What should I tell him when he inevitably calls back? I considered the question carefully. My initial impulse was to refuse outright, to give him a taste of the rejection he had so freely offered me. But that impulse passed quickly, replaced by something more measured. Tell him I would be happy to discuss potential synergies between our companies, I said finally. But that my priority must remain Automaton Dynamics, especially in this critical post-IPO period. Marcus nodded approvingly. Taking the high road. I would expect nothing less from you. In the weeks that followed, I found myself adjusting to a new normal. The media attention eventually died down, though I was now occasionally recognized on the streets of Los Angeles. Our stock price stabilized. Our employees settled back into their work routines, and the day-to-day challenges of running a public company became my new reality. My father never called back about the board position. Instead, he sent a formal email outlining his proposal, copying my sisters and our respective company attorneys. I responded with equal formality, declining the specific offer, but suggesting alternative ways our companies might collaborate. What surprised me most in the aftermath of our IPO was how quickly the achievement itself became background noise. The validation I had sought for so long, once received, lost its shine more rapidly than I had expected. What remained important were the relationships formed along the way and the impact of our technology on the clients who depended on it. 6 months after graduation, I made a decision that surprised many, but felt instinctively right to me. I established the Automaton Futures Foundation with $2 million of my personal shares, creating a scholarship fund specifically for young men and women pursuing careers in robotics and automation who come from disadvantaged backgrounds. The first recipient was a brilliant 19-year-old from rural Kentucky, whose father, like mine, believed technology was not a suitable field for his son. When I called to inform him of the scholarship, he cried and said, "This changes everything. My whole future just opened up." His words reminded me of my conversation with Thomas years earlier, when he had invested in Automaton Dynamics with the condition that I would help the next young entrepreneur with a brilliant idea. The cycle of support was continuing, expanding beyond what either of us had initially imagined. My relationship with my father remained complicated. We settled into a détente of sorts, communicating primarily through formal channels about potential business connections. He never apologized for his years of doubt, but he stopped actively predicting my failure. In the world of Robert Stone, this constituted significant progress. My mother visited often, delighting in the success I had built, and finally expressing her own regrets about not supporting me more actively in the early years. "I was so afraid of disrupting the family," she confessed during one visit. "But I see now that harmony built on inequality is not really harmony at all." Perhaps the most profound change occurred within me. The drive to prove my father wrong, which had fueled so many late nights and pushed me through countless obstacles, gradually transformed into something healthier, a desire to prove myself right. Right about the market opportunity, right about our technology approach, right about the team I had built. 1 year after our IPO, I was invited back to Caltech to give a lecture to engineering students about entrepreneurship. Standing at the podium in the same auditorium where I had graduated, I looked out at the eager faces and felt a sense of completion. "Success is not about proving others wrong," I told them. Though that can be temporarily satisfying, true success is about proving yourself right, about validating your own vision of what is possible. A young man raised his hand during the question period. "Did your father ever admit he was wrong about you?" The auditorium fell silent, waiting for my answer. "No," I said honestly, "and I no longer need him to." The most valuable lesson I learned in building Automaton Dynamics was not about technology or business strategy. It was about defining success on my own terms, rather than seeking external validation. As I left the stage to applause, my phone buzzed with a text from my father. "Saw your lecture was live-streamed. Well said." No apology, no admission of error, but perhaps in his way, a small step toward understanding. I smiled and put the phone away. My validation no longer came from Robert Stone. It came from the hundreds of employees who trusted their careers to my leadership, from the clients who entrusted their complex operations to our technology, from the young men and women who saw in my journey a map for their own. Several months after the IPO, as Automaton Dynamics settled into its new identity as a public company, our HR department, which had been rapidly scaled up to manage our growing workforce, began holding regular meet-and-greet sessions for new hires and established employees. As CEO, I tried to attend as many as my schedule allowed, believing in the importance of connecting with our people. One Tuesday morning, I was on my way to the company cafeteria for one such session. My assistant had already sent over the list of new employees joining that day, but I hadn't had a chance to review it in detail. As I walked down the main hallway, I saw a familiar face emerge from the HR office, holding a clipboard and a stack of new hire packets. It was Jessica Hayes. My steps faltered. 6 years. 6 years since she'd told me I wasn't established enough. Now, here she was, in my company's headquarters, She looked older, more polished, but undeniably her. She hadn't seen me yet, her head buried in a document. I continued walking, a strange mix of emotions swirling inside me. As I approached, she finally looked up, her eyes scanning the hallway, presumably looking for a new recruit. Her gaze landed on me, and her eyes widened. Her polite, professional smile froze. "Ethan?" she said, a hint of confusion, then recognition, then something that looked like pity crossing her face. "Ethan Stone? Is that really you?" I nodded slowly, a slight smile playing on my lips. "It is, Jessica. Long time no see." She straightened, a professional demeanor quickly taking over. "Wow. I didn't realize you were applying here. This is quite a surprise." She glanced at my well-tailored suit, a stark contrast to the worn college clothes she remembered. "Are you here for the new robotics engineer position? Or perhaps a data analyst role? We have a few openings that match your Caltech background." She flipped through her clipboard, clearly assuming I was an applicant. "You know, for an interview, you're a bit early for the general orientation, but I can certainly get you started. Did you check in at reception?" Her tone was friendly, efficient, the practiced calm of an HR manager. The irony was palpable. The girl who rejected me for being poor now thought I was a job seeker in my own company. "Actually, Jessica," I said, a slow, deliberate smile spreading across my face. I extended my hand. "It's good to see you. I'm not here for an interview." She looked puzzled, her hand already reaching out to shake mine. "Oh, did we schedule a follow-up about a previous application? I don't recall seeing your name in our system recently." "No," I said, my voice calm, but with an undercurrent of something she couldn't quite place. I gestured around the vast, modern lobby with the Automaton Dynamics logo shining on the wall behind us. "I already work here. In fact," I paused, letting the words hang in the air, "I'm the CEO. Welcome to Automaton Dynamics, Jessica." Her eyes went wide again, this time not with pity, but with a dawning realization that shifted quickly to shock. The clipboard in her hand trembled slightly. The color drained from her face. She looked from me to the logo, then back to me, as if trying to reconcile the penniless college student with the man standing before her. The CEO?" she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "But how? When did you— I thought I'm the new senior HR manager here." "I know," I said, my smile softening slightly. The triumph I might have felt was less about revenge and more about the simple, undeniable truth of the moment. "I saw your name on the new employee roster. Welcome to the team, Jessica. I trust your transition has been smooth?" She could only nod, speechless. The clipboard slipped from her grasp, hitting the polished floor with a quiet thud. The sound echoed in the sudden silence between us. My personal journey had come full circle. The girl who had dismissed me for my humble beginnings was now an employee in the multi-million-dollar company I had built. It wasn't about proving her wrong anymore, but simply about acknowledging how far I had come. My success was its own validation. If you like my story, please subscribe my channel.